delivered in a very interesting way. So we have lots of questions coming up during this session, and we appreciate your participation. It's important to note that this is the first of a kind live Q&A session, right? Normally we do it in a way where people just enter questions. We found, especially in this very technical subject, it was hard to just read questions. So please bear in mind as we try to manage any background noise there might be. So if you aren't speaking, please do us a favor and do put yourself on mute. That would be a big help. Thank you. This is a new and improved slide. Margie did this for us, but we want to remind everybody that the early bird registration for the Winter Technical Community Open Forum in San Diego ends on September 1st, and so that $500 registration is available still. We're getting some good traction as far as attendees. And also, we are getting some very good collaboration on developing the agenda. So I know a lot of you, it's very difficult for you to commit to a meeting without an agenda. We understand that. Many of our companies share the same challenges. So we're trying to do it as quickly as possible, but we also don't want to put something together and then it change too much as well. So the TC chairs, the legacy TC chairs are working very hard. In fact, they had a meeting yesterday afternoon to continue the development. But we're going to have a lot of good tracks. We're going to have a lot of good presentations. Just knowing the people that are involved, it's going to be a good thing. It is at the Wyndham. It's a beautiful hotel right on the bay in San Diego. We're just right about a block or so down from the aircraft carrier Midway. So it's a good place that you might want to visit. And of course, San Diego in the middle of January, what can I say? There's not too many better places to be. What to expect? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you, Madhave, do you want to go through this?
Yes, I can do that. Thanks for that introduction. I just wanted to set the expectations for the meeting today. So what to expect? We will, like Ron said, try to make this as live as possible, given that there are hundreds of attendees across the globe that are attending the call today. So two considerations, Ron actually already mentioned about, please try and be on mute as much as possible. The other, given that it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for others, and once we unmute people, you're going to hear all noises, so you need to kind of block out those noises, or at least make sure that you're on mute. And another important consideration was the questions could be lengthy or short, or maybe there are no questions from the attendees, but that's another consideration. So what we wanted to do was begin by having all participants on mute as Corey and Lance go through the list of questions that we have already received from the last webinar, as well as from a number of you in the last few days since the webinar was announced. So during that time, we want to make sure that you're all on mute. And then if you have a question following that, once we open up for questions, please raise your hand and submit your question. I will try and unmute that participant, and the person asks the question, and we're trying to restrict the conversation to 4 minutes or less, so everybody has a chance to ask their questions. Hopefully that makes sense. And with that said, I want to hand this over to Corey or Lance. And if you could just start sharing your screen, that'd be great.
Hey, Madhavi, do you want to go through and introduce Lance real quick?
Sure. Lance, Lance Lee, many of you know, he is from Raytheon, and I've known Lance for a really long time now. He's got tons of experience in CAD and PLM, and we are super excited that both Lance and Corey have been, have kindly agreed to join us for this session. So thank you, Lance and Corey, for giving this opportunity to learn more about Model Check and GateKeeper, and more importantly, have the questions answered. So it's a nice thing to have two-way communication.
Thank you, Madhavi.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Jones. I did a short presentation last week. There was a great number of questions, and I appreciate the questions. I also want to say thank you to Ron for the introduction and the opportunity to have this along with Madhavi. Thank you. Again, Lance is going to help me. So there was a lot of questions that we documented from the last webinar, and Lance and I both went through the questions and answered them to the best we can. I believe we can kind of have a go-between on different questions and also get some of Lance's opinion or his experience with some of the things also. So right now, hopefully everyone can see a spreadsheet that I've opened up and shared with everyone. And I believe we're just going to try to go through these questions relatively quickly but thoroughly. And then if we have any other questions that pop up as we go along, we'll try to answer those as much as possible. The first question here is something that we get asked a lot. The question for the initial user acceptance when we went down the adoption path of GateKeeper. This question is very common. I think anybody who presents around Model Check or the GateKeeper side has had this question, but here at NASA or at Kennedy Space Center, initially the users complained a lot. They went to management and said, this is going to slow us down, we're having issues, or they didn't like it. A lot of them agreed with what we were trying to do from a quality standpoint. But once we were able to prove to them that we could go down and add additional tools, we actually also made additional tools to help them update existing models in the system so that when they did check out and go down and or modify a part, that they had some tools to help them get that model up to the current configuration. So either map keys, we did make a few J-Link applications using Java with inside of Creo, and then we did go down batch where we would help them out and say per product we would run a set of map keys or Java apps and fix an entire product all at once. Their attitudes changed greatly after they witnessed the quality rising and helping them with what they were trying to do. They understood that bad models caused them to either have more time fixing someone else's problems or just the download time or the upload time was very large. So here it wasn't very long. It was a matter of weeks, not matters of months, but attitudes changed greatly. So now we've had one instance where we had to take down GateKeeper because of a Creo problem. And people started complaining right away when everyone else was able to pass along their lower quality models to other people. So that says to me that they understood and have actually come to appreciate the fact that quality is something that has a minimum standard to it. Lance, would you like to go down that path, or do you have any input on that?
Sure. We do, at Raytheon, we do not use GateKeeper. One of the reasons why is because it was very limited, and Corey will show, I think, one of the questions later on, asks, you know, what happens if a user tries to check in a file with an error. You know, maybe he's running model check on a large assembly and he needs to leave, and you know, and if you have model check, if you have GateKeeper turned on and he's hitting errors, he won't be able to check his file in. But we do push model check, and actually at Raytheon, we developed our own reporting tool and actual scoring tool. So when you run model check, you actually get a ribbon across the top of your window that tells you the score of the model. So we weigh the errors and warnings and start giving them a score for model reuse. and that's helping also improve the users as as they're modeling and creating these assemblies or models. That they definitely want to hit that 100% mark. Especially here at Raytheon, we do a lot of model reuse. So we look at models, and that's going to help out in our bidding process because we want to reuse, say, like a missile or reuse a radar. We want to know how good those models are before they actually, process the bid. That's all, Corey.
Okay, great. Next question, someone asked about local languages. I'm sorry, I don't really know the answer to this one, especially from a Russian standpoint. That one I would have to point you to PTC to get you an answer on that one. So sorry, I couldn't answer that one. The next one, I think we went over this within the presentation, but there is a Model Check working group out there that has started. We are growing. I've had a few people contact me since last week asking to be part of that, and I hopefully have got to everyone. If I've missed you, please let me know. Model Check update. Lance, I know you had some experience with this one. Would you like to start off on that?
Sure. One thing that you'd like to do with Model Check is if you actually have Model Check already set up on to run within Creo environment, when you process a model, you get the errors and warnings. But if you click on the little icon, and if your company has Creo help loaded, it will actually open up right to Model Check and give you the different options. Then inside the help files, you can actually start exploring what the different options are. And with Model Check update, we realize that it's either an all or nothing that it updates. So there's an update, there's an update mode, and then there's a Model Check. Model Check will tell you what your errors and warnings are. It will give you the option to fix some of the things like Corey showed in his previous meeting. But the update mode will say, okay, we want to update all the layers and all the parameters and a bunch of other things. So you really have to look into exactly what it's going to update, because you might not want it to automatically update something. Like a user asked if we have insert mode turned on and we run through, we want it to update the parameters, but we don't want it to update insert mode. So you have to be careful. In the Creo help files, it does tell you what it will update and what it won't update.
Yeah, we ran into similar issues where we tried to get it to update layers or that, but we ran into other issues where it was conflicting, so it just did not seem like it was we had too many things that we needed to contradict or to interact with to get it to work correctly, so we decided to go down a different path, mostly by just creating J-Link applications on our own. So next question, Lance and I we both put our personal emails up here, so if you want to contact us directly afterwards, I think Madhavi is going to make this spreadsheet available for everyone, and you can contact us directly through our personal emails. Oops, sorry, scrolled too much. So we talked about this one, I believe, also. Model Check Interactive with family tables. There was a few things that we have to set for it to actually run, but I will go down a path, and I'm going to probably make a presentation about this one specifically on. It's a little tricky to deal with. Family table parts are treated one way. Family table assemblies are treated another way. And I believe there's a couple other questions, but the main thing I want to make sure everybody understands what this one is lock your workspace lock those objects in your workspace that you don't want to modify. So we can get a little bit more in depth with that later. Lance, do you have any input on that one?
No, I do not, Corey.
Okay, cool.
I know a question just came through on our email early this morning about that.
Yep. I think I got that one down a little bit lower. We can try to get to it. It's a little complicated, so I want to make sure that I do justice on that, and I think I'll put a presentation together and we can email it out to the attendees later, maybe. So GateKeeper question here, why do you have model check configuration blank? We leave it blank here because we wanted our configuration initialization file to make the decision on what should be the proper configuration and not limit it to GateKeeper. So let me pull up my presentation and we can go right back through that. So
while Corey's pulling up and finding his slide, the reason that he's leaving that blank is because if you set that parameter to only run certain configuration files, and if your model check runs a different set of configuration files, then it won't be able to check those files in. So that's why Corey leaves it blank, because he's allowing model check to run, determine on his parameter that he had set, will run different check files. For us in Raytheon, we have it so we have a parameter and we can determine whether, it's a legacy file, whether it's an MBD file, or it's a design file, which means a current file. So depending on what that parameter is set at in the model, it will go off and run different checks. So we can have all MBD checks and start configurations, or all legacy, because our legacy models have a lot more errors than our newer models do. So when you run that, it will create a different kind of check. And I believe I show down at the very bottom of Corey's spreadsheet an example of it running the different checks.
I can bring that up if you want.
Oh, you didn't have that version, do you?
It doesn't look like it, Lance. If you want to email it to me real quick, I can grab it too.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry about that. So the reason we leave the configuration blank in Windchill is we have these different conditions that we want, right? So we have a different setups for base files, prototypes, then down to each of the start parts and its constant file. So what we're utilizing is that this ID code that coordinates back with the condition INT file to determine what files we want to actually use or to the configuration to run. So if I open the config initials, or not the config, the condition file.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry. So this condition file is what we want model check to determine, and then GateKeeper just looks at the number of errors. GateKeeper or Windchill side doesn't look at what checks you ran. It just sees to see if you have any errors or not. So you can see we have different if statements based on our parameter called ID code to determine what the configuration is. If we were to define it in Windchill GateKeeper, our whole philosophy of changing the ID code would not work.
And what Corey's talking about, if you go back, Corey, what he's talking about, so the one that he has highlighted, for example, if ID code equals D92, okay, then he has his config set to, I want my config to, in the check folder, which is, and then the backslash or forward slash, check underscore draw underscore legacy. So he named that file exactly to run certain checks. And then next thing over is his start folder. And in there he has his start underscore draw underscore legacy facilities. So he's naming each check file specifically that will coordinate with these certain parameters that he has set up. So D00, D01, D10. So if you look at that, you can see each one might be named differently. And that's how we have it set up to read a parameter. And then in that parameter, you actually specify what files you want it to run. And it's easy to do because, you know, in Windows Explorer, you just, you know, you have your one.mch file, you just copy, paste it, name it something different, and then go in there and, you know, change the settings inside each file that you want. And it helps that, like Corey's showing, also like the one that's highlighted, you name it so you know what it's going to actually be doing. So here, the one that's highlighted, it's looking at legacy stuff, not NBD stuff.
Right, exactly. And our check file, we get a good number of different checks now that we want to change. And one thing you can see, some of these, the check file may be the same for all three of these ID codes, but one is a regular start part for an inch, one is a metric start part, and one is a facility start part, where we're working feet and inches around here with a lot of the buildings that we do. So some of these ID codes may be 2/3 of exactly the same, but we just change the constant out for an inch model or metric model or an AISC feet and inches style. So thank you, Lance. Good point. So let's make sure I scrolled accidentally back up to where we're supposed to be. So we went over this question number 9 right at the very end of the presentation last week. I believe I showed how you can have a value reported or checked over from a standpoint of just not only checking for errors, but for a metric standpoint, and we went over that a little bit at the very end. The next one, does GateKeeper component get installed on the Windchill server or the workspace client machine? So GateKeeper is a set of preferences within inside of Windchill itself. It's a no cost. It comes with every the PDM link side of Windchill, and it's something that's there. It's turned off by default, but you can configure it as a no-cost option. So it's not something you have to install. It's just preferences that you have to set within inside of the different contexts that you want to use.
Corey, I see someone has raised their hand. Can we take the question?
Sure. Do you want to go ahead and unmute the person?
Yes. Let me try and do that.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. My name is Lawrence. About those ID codes that you just showed, how do those get associated to the correct models? Do the users do that? Does the admin do that? Does it get done automatically?
So the user does that. Oh wait, I got out of the remote back into my Creo session. So the ID code. Sorry about that.
Do you have your ID code in a drop down for your restricted list for parameters?
Yes. Yep. So it's in the start part and it's in all of the start parts for each of the models. So let me activate this window. Sort by name. So ID code is a restricted parameter, but it's in this case a string value because we wanted to have D values. And what we went with is the basic 00 is the value that is in the start part that's defined. This 000 ID code is what I would say is our basic, most strict checks that are out there. If we had a production part that we wanted it to be perfect, the ID code that we default in the start part is the hardest one to pass, or the highest quality standards. So the user starts with this one. Most of the time, because they select a different part, they need the checks to change. So I might run checks on ID code with this one in our normal start part, and I need to, it's a prototype part. I'll fail some checks, then I can decide, okay, I need to go set it to a different ID code and rerun model check to have that error be a warning instead. So that's what we default by saying the normal start part that everybody's going to use has the hardest checks set to it by default. Does that make sense, Lawrence?
Yeah, it does. So yeah, I don't know. It's surprising. It seems like a very manual process for the user, especially since those ID numbers and that they have to go look up them.
And that's some of the complaints that we get. We did set up different start parts. So if I knew I was using a sheet metal part, that ID code is set correctly in the start part for a sheet metal part. Same thing with another question that we'll get to later. Someone asked about cabling. Our cabling start part has that code set correctly already. The thing,
so the model
unfortunately,
check,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, the model check can't recognize like something in the description and then run a certain check without the user having to do that?
Not right now. There's some other if statements that you can use, but it's not that intelligent.
Okay. The easiest way is to, for now, since of course it's not that intelligent yet, the easiest way is to set a parameter and have that parameter defaulted to a certain value per start part type. Like you said, at Raytheon, we have a sheet metal start part, we have a cabling start part, a legacy start part, an MBD start part, MBD start assembly, regular start assembly. So our parameter, like Corey's, ours isn't called ID code, but ours is called model type.
Right.
It's a restricted drop-down list, but it's set to a specific value per each start part.
Now, if you're talking about start parts, it sounds like one, you guys don't do many save ases, and two, I guess I'm not sure how you handle older stuff that's already existing that you have to modify later on, like revise.
So we do a lot of save as. It's pretty prevalent. That's not something that we don't do. We do a lot of it. The one thing that I can do with inside of Windchill for a legacy, I can edit a workspace and set the ID code for 1,000 parts all at the same time. I don't have to open, because our ID code is a designated Windchill parameter, I can en masse change them, so when I open it in Creo, that ID code is changed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The other thing that Model Check out of the box, in their example file, PTC set up some different examples here, so you can see that they're commented out. You can look at different types. They have different examples of what you can do to change the different configurations. So you can say, based on model name, you can do it based on, if it's a family table generic, you could do it based on the date that the part was created. If it was greater than or equal to 1997, use this check. So there are other examples out there. It just depends on what your company wants to use on how you go down this path. And how do you have different combinations of it was before 1997, but it is also a family table part. And that's where we struggled, is we had so many different scenarios that we decided to come up with our own parameter.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Just one other person I think has a related question. Can we just get to Peter? You're on, sure. Peter. Okay, we lost
Peter. Okay.
You there?
Yep.
Okay. I guess we lost Peter, so please continue, Corey and Lance. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So next question somebody asked was, can we look for overwritten dimensions on drawings within Model Check? Yes. That check is named dim_overwrite. So if someone did overwrite a dimension, it errors it out, or it will check it based on your requirement, either give it an error or warning. This is something that we have set as an error. I think everybody understands that's why overwriting dimensions are bad. One thing that we had to really educate our user base was that they have different ways to change dimension show values. It could show a name instead of the value, and you don't have to overwrite it. So that is one example that we had to do in education once we got that check in place. Will Model Check add parameters to a Creo model? We showed this. Yes, you have the capability to interact with the Model Check screen and then enter in some sort of value for Model Check to add it. You can add as a null value if you type null in capitals, but you have to interact with the Model Check HTML page. Do you expect post-regeneration relations to be improved by PTC, possibly Creo 5? That's one of the topics that we've added to the working group. I'm not sure where it ranks on their level right now, but it is a concern that we brought up. So can WT part associations be driven by your ID code? It's not a direct association-driven link. We utilize it for our users for them to best understand it. So we have a SharePoint wiki page that kind of goes through a different training for them to say, if you have this type of ID code, generally your WT part associations are these, and we've trained different job functions downstream from that, either checking or within the CM group, to verify that that association is proper prior to the release. Lance, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I don't.
Okay. So next question. So this is very similar to what we went off over at the very beginning. Bennett is asking, in his organization, not all users are they're not aware of what's going on with Model Check, so there's lots of files already in that they would need to add Model Check to or enhance or update later. He's asking how would be a suggestion to do that. We've done that with a lot of different scenarios. We most recently wrote a Java JLink application that we could go through and update the most standard things. So we have standard start parts features that we wanted to add, so it adds parameters automatically. We can add the standard layers automatically. What we can't always do is interact and make a decision based on other values. So when you're uploading or modifying 3,000 parts, you can't determine what the finished property should be for everything. So you still have some interaction to go back to, but for the most cases, you can handle some pretty big key hitters all at once. But you will have to, someone will have to interact with all of those. From a time standpoint, it's very difficult. Our J-Link app will go through some 5 or 6 standard things that we want to run, and it runs about 30 seconds on each part. But your company standards may be different, so it's hard for us to understand what that would do.
And also, with the same thing, you might just be able to run a couple hundred through batch mode. So if you don't have J-Link script people or people that can write J-Link for you, look into running batch mode. You know, that's an easy start.
So we had another question that came up. Oh, sorry, Lance.
No, I was gonna let you take over.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say I was done.
Okay. Sorry, we had a question pop up from David Walker. It looks like it's more of a statement or not too much of a question, but David says, in order to accommodate 12 active programs and offer multiple levels of model check analysis for each program, using a parameter to dictate different model check configurations is very efficient. Thank you, David. So then going on to the next question, 21, is there a way to pop up warnings and errors? Not directly in Creo. Model check interacts through the HTML pop-up when it's done. We did write some Java link or J-Link applications. An example here is a circle reference creation. So upon the user creating a circle reference, instead of waiting for him to notice the file was done or to pay attention into the message string, we do pop up an additional warning window right then and there upon regeneration, saying the last action that you just did since your previous regeneration has created a circle reference. So that allows them to know whatever action they just did before that regeneration created a circle reference. And it's made it much easier for our user community to understand what a circle reference is and how you create it. Lance, you have a comment there, so.
Oh yeah, that was the same thing as before. Like Corey said, it only reads to the HTML page inside your embedded browser, but we took it a step farther and have a banner pop up with your score. So we're actually pushing score. You still see your errors and warnings below, so you can still fix them. But it's more of a mental thing where, you know, you really don't want a model that has a 50% score, because mentally you're thinking to yourself, what can I improve on this to get my score up? And then also we use it for model reuse. We do reuse a lot of models.
Lance, so you're talking this banner here where we've customized the banner to show our NASA meatball behind it. Is that the banner that
yes.
you kind of...
Okay. Correct. If there's errors, that banner, if you have any errors, that banner is red, and inside of it, it will tell you how many errors you have, and then also it will tell you a percentage score.
Awesome. So, Madhavi, if you could unmute Dimitri for us. Dimitri has raised his hand with a question.
Yes, let me do that. Dimitri, you're on.
Hi, Corey. So I guess question to to follow up with question 21. So you are running it in the regenerate mode, right, to allow those pop-ups.
So that pop-up for the circle reference is completely outside of GateKeeper. It's not in GateKeeper itself. It's an action listener inside of Creo. So the Java application is running when you start Creo, and it's listening for an action. In this case, it's waiting for that circle reference to be created.
So it's listening for a CRC file to be created, right?
Yep, exactly.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. So now, question number 22, how does Model Check different than Expert Model Analysis, XMA? So this is more of a general type question, but we went through with PTC and evaluated XMA for Kennedy Space Center, and for those that don't know it, it's a paid service that PTC has. They determined what their best practices for it are. They have quite a few number of levels. They kind of a good, better, best policy. We did do a study with them where we took a subsystem. It was around 3,000 models, and ran it through their XMA bulk system. It was prior, the first use case was prior to our model check policy that had been in place. So we went back in time and found a subsystem previous to our current setup, ran it through their XMA. They tell you what errors, how many models were there with those, each type of error, and then they also make a recommendation on how to correct it. And then we went and reran that exact same subsystem after our model check policies were put in place, and said, okay, what's XMA say about that? And you could see a lot of the things are similar, that the expectations of the model check caught the same kind of errors and the same kind of things that we tried to fix. And it was just not really, we saw it as a lower level than model check, because like what Lance said here, we wanted our business definition, our rules to be put in place, not PTC's best practices. So Lance, do you have something to add to that?
No, we also did a study on XMA, and we spoke with PTC. And the reason why we decided not to go with XMA is because, like Corey said, we wanted to be able to customize it. And we want, like we're doing with model check, we can run model check depending on, like Corey showed earlier, different types of checks and different types of starts depending on the model that you're running it against. So this way, we have more customizability with model check than we did with XMA.
Thanks, Lance. So next question, since you're manually saving after running model check mode, is a user prevented from making other changes between when he ran model check last and saving? And how does the verified get reset? So that's, yes, the user has to, if he makes any changes other than when model check was ran, other than hitting save, model check, the verified parameter will be reset back to no. The reason we could run and have it automatically save, we've investigated doing that, but we also understood that the user had to interact most of the time with model check. So if the user came back and, for example, he was missing a parameter or missing some kind of other function, when he runs model check, generally he has some kind of interaction back with the system. So he has to do that, determine if how to fix that error and actually fix the error before he has anything else to do anyways. So we cut down on the number of saves just knowing that they had something to interact with. So here, I can create this parameter. I check the box. I can type in null, hit add. It goes through, and you can see down here in the message window that it created the parameter and designated it to Windchill. And I could hit save here, or I could hit rerun model check. Now model check has no errors. Now I have to save. So it was just a policy put in place. We could readdress it, but right now it seems to work pretty well. Lance, do you have anything to add?
No, I do not.
Can the configuration files be controlled and shared by Windchill so they're not changed in the install location of the user? We handle this a little bit differently. You can lock down with inside of Model Check. There's a couple different ways to talk about this. I think this one's specifically enough that we could do some kind of presentation or another one. But right now we robocopy it over, and they most of the time they can't edit the file. They can only read the file based on our install. So they can't change anything anyway with inside that configuration file. So we don't utilize Windchill to push it over. Lance, do you want to talk about what Raytheon's handling now?
Yeah, we have it set also where the users cannot override the configuration file. We use a thing called ClearCase, and we have a developed launcher. So when you launch Creo, it actually trues up the files from our ClearCase location. So this way we can make a change on our ClearCase server, and every time the user relaunches, it checks and trues up the files if anything has changed. So if we push other change, the users will get the new change. So if we make a model check setting change, they'll automatically get it the next time they launch. But we also have it set where the users cannot manually override or change any model check settings. And you can also set an admin press file for model checks, so only certain people have the ability to make the changes.
That's interesting to me. Do you manage all your configurations or config files for Creo with inside a ClearCase?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
all of them, from model check to our web page, or embedded web page, to our whole files, to our layer files, to yeah, we manage them all in ClearCase and push them down.
we have ClearCase here that a lot of our software teams are utilizing, so that I'm going to look into that. Thank you.
Yep.
So question number 26, do you have any custom model checks? Not in production. We're working on some using Toolkit, but right now we've gone with just the out-of-the-box ones. Looks like Lance, same way. Question number 30, in the check file, when you define the relations to be added, if a model is missing, will model check overwrite the existing relations or append them? It appends that relation, so it does cause some other issues. If you can, in theory, create some double relations. I've seen some users get to it, but right now, that is another request that I've had with the model check working group to relook of how the relations are added. This could be different depending on, I heard some different paths forward for Creo 5 and relationships, or the relation editor, but I'm not sure where they're going to go with that. No errors means that you have to account for all exceptions. We explain how you do that, how you can be that strict while accounting for exceptions. So again, we created the ID code parameter, and I think we went through it a little bit today on what the different lines for the condition file are and why. But for the most part, if we couldn't say it was a best practice shall be done, we have a lot of warnings that probably should be errors. We do ask all of our users to review, even if it's a warning, and go down that path. But our big stance there was, if I can't say it's a shall situation, then it's most likely just a warning. We do have, because of the different ID codes, we have different shall statements for different types, but that's how at least it's worked here, and we've had a great acceptance of it. We haven't changed our model check configuration in probably 3 years. We had a spelling mistake here or there, but for the most part, we haven't had any drastic changes in a long time. And I think Lance went over their opinion at Raytheon with the model score is a different policy or a different way to handle being that strict or not, or your company policies, right?
Correct.
32, can the check-in restriction be dependent on model status? Concept can be check-in, but work cannot. That policy is not really defined with GateKeeper. I'm not sure how your access are gonna, but right now that's not easily readable with GateKeeper.
You can actually set that model check parameter to be like a no check if you wanted. So there is no checks allowed in your, I think it's in your config init file or condition file. Yeah, the condition file. So if you set that parameter, you can say no check. So if the one right above what Corey has highlighted, that last if statement, he could say if ID code equals 250, no check.
Right,
and
that's actually, somebody asked the question, how do we handle bulk items? And then that's how we handle bulk items, is if it's a bulk item or an ID code, we just don't check it.
There's your bottom one right there. If ID code equals 800, no check. So you can actually set, your Windchill parameter to that, like, if, well, you don't want pending approval, because if it's that pending approval, nobody should be modifying it anyways. But that makes a good statement, because we made a model check change ourselves, and we have state changes down there as no checks. And we have checkers that actually go in, and they will run model check on files at pending approval, even though users, they can't make changes. They'll still run model check to see what errors that the models are getting. So down there, like, we have, if it's released, no check. If it's engineering release, no check. So we have different no checks for ours.
Good point, Lance. Thanks.
Yep, no problem.
So I know we talked about it a little bit last week on, somebody had a question about what was the number of sketches allowed here at KFC. Currently, we had it set to 75, but we've proposed to lower it. The trouble being there is once you kind of set the bar, it's pretty hard to change it or to lower it. People always say, well, what happens if I need to change something that is above what your new proposal is? we're trying to, probably a bad word, but negotiate with management on where that needs to be set. Lance, do you want to talk about where Raytheon has it?
Yeah. Sorry, I was taking a drink of water. Yeah, we've always
no
had it set at 25. So ours hasn't changed. It's always been 25. And we're thinking, you know, yeah. If you need more than 25 items in a sketch, then you should probably be making it a separate item.
Yeah, I was trying, when I was filling out the questions, I was trying to figure out when the last time I made something over 20, and I can't.
Exactly. I mean, if it's going to be, your sketch is going to be that jagged or, you know, that many like cuts inside of your sketch, then make it another feature, because that way you can change the feature and not have to change a huge sketch, which could possibly drive a lot more child verification errors down the road.
Go ahead, Lance.
I would say we can move to the next one.
Okay. So this question came across, said mark it for the end, but that was at the end of last week. So Model Check works fine on files natively created by your company, but how do we deal with importing files that have been created outside of our system that we're utilizing? So this is a common thing. We do have an ID code and a condition set up for those outside vendor parts. So when a user gets that, they go to import it. They actually have a start file for those imported or delivered files, and they can set it up so that that condition code goes further. The other thing that we have done is we've made our Model Check configuration and start parts available for those organizations that KSE has contracts going with, design contracts. So we do have some engineering firms that are doing design work for us, and part of that work was that they would follow our standard, and we've made those available. I know some of the previous organizations that I was with, that's a common thing. Lance, you want to talk about how Raytheon handles that?
Yeah, we use a start part, standard start part that you can define. You know, even in a blank Creo screen, you can drag and drop files from Windows Explorer. So you can set that to what start file you want to automatically use. And so if you have a step file from a vendor, users just drag and drop it into the Creo screen, it automatically sets it up with the start part to use that has all these predefined parameters, layers, and also a predefined model check parameter, you know. So then, you know, like we spoke earlier, once it's predefined, like Corey said, his ID code, then it knows what model check settings to go run against.
All right. Thanks, Lance. Madhavi, hopefully you can answer the next one. I can't remember, but a non-related question was, what was the cost of the winter conference? Madhavi, you know offhand what it was?
I believe it was 500. I think it was 500.
And that's with the early bird, but yep.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't know.
Okay, that's great. No problem. We showed earlier how an attribute or parameter could be created, and it automatically can designate it if you set it to be designated in your start file. Our Model Check GateKeeper, part of the parametric license or any extra licenses. Both portions are base license. Model Check is part of the base Creo package, And the GateKeeper functionality is preferences in the base PDM link. Are the files show proprietary? I checked on this, and right now I've been directed that they are proprietary. So sorry about that. Can we find circle references in Model Check? Yes. I forgot to look up the actual check, but it will check for that circle reference and define it as an error, as a warning, whatever your configuration setup is.
Corey, that it is called circular_refs. That's the check.
Oops, I hit the wrong button. Circular.
_ref. Yes.
And then the CHK?
No. Just REFS. That's the check name.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Lance.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason why you don't set Model Check Interactive to update the parameters automatically? You can do that using Model Check Update, but like Lance said, Update has some rules set to it. So right now, within the interactive mode, typically the user needs to define the values for the parameters. So we can't think for the engineers, but we do have a map key that will just blow in all of the parameters if somebody was to not use a start part. But then they still have to go back and either enter in a name or some other values. So we have the interaction with the engineer as a standard. Another cost question. We've been over that, I think. Presentation. I believe, Madhavi, you've made the presentation available, or was it just the recording?
Just the recording. I don't know if you want to share the presentation, but
yeah, I can email the presentation to you, and can we post it at the same place as the recording, or?
Kind of, not really the same place, but around the same area. It'll be a different. Okay. That's the way we've been doing for the others as well. So we can do that, Corey.
Okay, great. So we talked about the family tables. I think this topic we'll have to expand upon in the future. It's got some quirkiness to it, depending on nested family tables and some other things. And then the interaction with Windchill depends on some other scenarios. So we'll try to document those in the future. How can you prevent models from being checked out when running Model Check? The best thing here is locking your workspace or locking that object prior to running Model Check, either all levels or just at one. I guess we did go over it. You can add it to that no check. You could prevent. Excuse me. You could prevent that by adding it to for this if statement for no check. It's another way.
And also on top of that, how do you prevent models from checking out when running Model Check? There is a config option where you have, if you're connected to PDM link, you can set a config option to have a certain defaulted value. So example, if you have a part in your workspace that's not checked out and you click on a dimension to change it, I don't know if you guys get a pop-up window to either continue checkout or revise and checkout. You can actually, the config option, you can have it set to continue. So it won't check it out, but you can continue with that.
So I could show something along that line. So this is the pop-up that Lance is talking about. So I tried to change that parameter or that dimension, and I don't have it checked out, so Windchill or Creo pops up and asks me to interact with Windchill, and how do I want to do that? So there's the different options.
If you have it set to continue, it won't check it out, but you can still modify it locally, so you can still run model check on it.
Yep. Good point, Lance. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised we haven't had too many people raising their hands, so I guess we're doing a good job. Is there a way to set up model check and have it ignore looks like layers that start with a certain prefix, or can we have model check see all wildcard, something that starts with start part layers? Lance, you have an answer in the spreadsheet. You want to start with that one?
Yeah, with model check, you either have to list every layer in your file because it's preferenced by a thing called part_layer in your start file, like Corey's showing right here. So you would have to actually list every layer starting with 99_. But starting it with Creo 3, you have the ability to actually just use a part template. So you would not have to have all those settings right there. It will actually just go out and do layers and parameters against your start part template, or your start part that you're using as a template.
And I think, Phil, you asked that question. Does that answer your question, or do you have something else to add to that? It's not. Okay. So we went through how to prevent checkout, how to refresh the page when performing model check interactive twice. So I think I understand. I want to make sure, but so let's get rid of that read-only part. I'm here on my part again, so I run model check. The HTML file pops up. I'm assuming that they're just going to not interact, or they're going to run model check again. I'm not totally sure, but it does rerun model check and update the HTML. Phil, or Lance, have you had any problems with that? Do you understand the question?
I was thinking of the same thing too. Like, so maybe they actually made a change to something in the interface, like they added a parameter through the interface right here and ran model check again. They want to know if it updates. That's what I was thinking the question is. And it does automatically update, like Corey's showing right there.
Yeah, you can expand. So by default, this is collapsed. You can expand it and show the time frames will update. So if there's ever a question if it did update that, would I guess recommend looking at the timestamp. So this one, we had an email either late last night or this morning about a user asked, they've created the 5 required attributes for GateKeeper and Windchill and have turned on those parameters in model check, yet they are having trouble with GateKeeper failing it. So the attributes should just be designated from Creo. They're automatically seen in Windchill. These parameters there, or in the presentation, we can go through those, what they're needed to be. I believe I did that down here. Where did I do that? So I'll go back through and make sure I properly lay out those parameters that need to be updated for that. I'll do a better job. I'll send it out with a presentation. I have a prior presentation that I created back in 2012 that went through that process a little bit better. And then if you're still having troubleshooting errors, feel free to contact me through my personal email. So I'll make that presentation available also.
Yeah, the basic ones are MC underscore, well, we have it set to the configuration files, the number of errors, the mode that it was run in, and when model check was run.
Right. So those are actually model check configuration, not Windchill setup. So you can see add date parameter, add error parameter, add config parameter, and mode. These are all set in the config initialization file, not within inside of Windchill. So I'm not sure if I made a problem with that, or I have a better presentation that we can go in depth, send it to the user. We did have one question that just popped up from Peter. Peter says, can you elaborate on how to set up the model checking layers via start part? So, Lance, I think Peter is referring to your reference part that you made a comment to in Creo 3.
Yeah, if you go there, if right there where under Corey's cursor, it says use a part underscore template. So you can then for that you actually point to the start template that you want to use, or your start part that you want to use. So maybe I have my MBD checks. I want to use, instead of listing all my layers and parameters, I just have in my model checking, I have PRT underscore template, and then I have the path and the name of the MBD start part that I want the layers and parameters to check against. So it has to be in your start file. And then in there,
file.
Yep.
Awesome.
You open that up instead of, oh, you can open up any one that you're okay sharing. Yep. So like here, instead of having like part underscore data underscore plane or unit lengths, like in some of them, Corey showed that he had layers and he had parameters showing. Here, you would just list part underscore template and then have the path and the specific part called out that you want to use as the template. Did that answer your question, Peter?
Yep.
Okay. You said yes.
Awesome.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Lance. So we went through that one. We had another family table question. It seems like it's a popular problem. Which family tables I think are problems for everybody. Recommendation was this: run model check in regeneration mode on the generic, which checks all instances. We found it necessary to put the MC verified parameter in the family table and set its instances to, so that's a asterisk, which is default when the family table is run as a part. Otherwise, the parameter gets switched to no on the instances when model check is run on the generic. Have you found this is the case? They're using Creo 3. So we're utilizing Creo 2, and we do not have that problem. I believe, if my memory is correct, that is because of a code here of verified instances. This is where it'll actually run the check on each file lower level, and it will add the parameter to everything. So without that setup, that is what is causing that issue. So let me copy that. Copy those two over. Paste that there. Lance, are you, oops. Lance, are you having any similar problems with that?
No, we are not.
So cabling and bulk items, we handle this either with the ID code or with inside, and that's wrong. That's the condition file. Or within the condition, I think we've shown already that at the very bottom we have this no check side of things, and we just give it either no check it, or you can define for different types to be no check based off of some of these examples at the top. So if you knew, like for example, bulk items, you didn't want to check bulk items, you just add that as a no check, and it'll bypass model check completely. So this is similar. I think we went through it. The next question was, what's the best location to store model check files so the designers can globally use? We utilize RoboCopy based into the Creo startup script. Lance utilizes ClearQuest and does a similar mode to get it based on when they start Creo. So we have a startup script that we customize to be able to change what's going on. Lance, do you have anything else to use on or to update? I think we've gone over that a couple times, but
no, I do not.
The next one, it's possible to tell a model update to ignore automatically, not to resume features when it finds insert mode activated. I don't remember. It's been a few years since we decided not to use model check update. Lance, do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah. Actually, the one I sent you back has I put in an answer to that one.
Okay. Let me bring my email.
Okay. Yeah, because I quoted exactly from the help file. If the update mode is enabled, the insert mode is automatically deactivated. So if you have insert mode, like the question is, if he had insert mode halfway up through his model, and he runs model check update, he doesn't want that activate mode to move, but it will automatically deactivate it, and insert mode will move back down to the bottom. So that's right from the help file saying that it will deactivate it.
Okay, great. I get a few things to rearrange. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. Okay, great. I guess we can continue on here. Appreciate it if you could show a demo to set the condition file to pick different start files for each type of unit. Unsuccessful in this. Lance is exactly right. Lance has got an example here. The hardest thing for me, this took some time, but case sensitive and very easy to make a extra space or other issue going on. Lance, you have an example there. You want to talk about it?
It's just a follow-up example. Of course, we're talking about ID code, so I just put in there if parameter name equals whatever value you want it to be. Parameter name could be whatever parameter that you want to use to run model check against. So if parameter name equals value 1, then in my check files, I create a file called value1. We put _rev, so we're starting to keep track of the rev of our model check files. So right now it's a rev dash, and then in our start, we want a value1 file also, so we know that it's going to run these certain checks for that specific value. And then we do the same thing for value2. But for us, it's a model type parameter, and then we have it as design, MBD. So we have a parameter set for different values. But there's a basic example.
One thing I can add to that, when I created our large file, I utilized Excel. So I went through and created columns and different conditions, and then utilized concatenation and some simple formulas to actually create that line. And then I just copied and pasted into text. So that was the easiest way that I was able to do it.
And that would be a good way to, as a start, so you know. So value1, so you have your names laid out in front of you, and that's a good place to do is start in Excel. So you have your names laid out for you, like, you know, your first column is what's the parameter value. The second column is what is your check folder name. Third column would be what is your start folder name. So then you have it all laid out for you in front of you, and then you can just copy and paste from the cell into your config init file, the name of the file that you want to run it against.
Let's wrap that text. So that one we went through. Cabling, bulk items, we went through those two. I believe there were some new questions.
So just a time check, we are almost at 12:30, so just wondering how many more questions so we can give a sense.
Actually, we went through all of the questions that are on the spreadsheet now, so we did have one new question that just came through from David. If you want to unmute David, or I can read his question out loud.
Try and find David.
Dave Walker.
David, you should be able to.
Oh, David says just to read it. So, can model check start file be configured to check for relations that are not in the initial relation table, such as relations associated to the default coordinate system? Not maybe need your help here, David. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that.
I think he's asking if the relation's not set in your check file, but he wants it to check it to see in case it's related to a coordinate system. So if they find this extra relation in your file, would it be okay to bypass it if it's not in your list?
Right. So just like an extra layer, I can add whatever relations to my file that I want. Model check just checks to see that you have the whatever is defined in the start. It doesn't air out any other problems. So
we have another question, Corey.
Yeah, I lost my remote desktop session. Lance, would you mind reading that one while I get my session back?
Yeah, no problem. David, did we answer that question for you? Users can actually enter it in if they want. If model check finds an extra relation, you can still let it bypass and go in. So there's a question from Brandon. How do you prevent users from cheating by setting the parameter code to the no check code to skip fixing their model, downstream metrics, drafting, checking processes? So yes, users aren't allowed to change it because if you, so since Corey lost his screen, I wonder if I can show my screen.
Yeah, let me change you to presenter.
Oh, are you still? No, you can go in if you can still just show your parameter list of a Creo model.
So not this.
Creo?
Not this one.
No.
Oh, that's where I lost my
Creo.
session.
Oh, okay.
I can't get the Creo, so let me make you a presenter real quick.
Okay. So
you
show
should be
my
able
screen.
to present.
Yeah, I'm showing. I believe I'm showing my screen now.
Yep.
And let me close this. Actually, I ran model check, and if you go down to my model check parameters, you notice that the access for my config, no errors, interactive, and MC, they're all locked. And it even tells you the source that it's locked by. So users cannot change them because they're automatically locked. I can't go in here, say edit, okay, I want to continue. I can change all the ones that you see that have changed to black text. That allows me to change them. Those are my drop-down list, right? Or if it's blank, I can add it in here. But if I scroll down to my model check ones, you can see I can't change them because they're automatically designated as and locked by model check. Does that answer your question, Brandon? How does that work with Corey's method of using a code for checks, though?
So he's exactly right. Sorry, Lance. They can pick a wrong ID code, but our checkers, not only checkers, but also CEM and also some of the management that signs off on promotions noticed that it's part of their checks, and they're able to go see that model was a no check code, and they'll either bring it up and say, why was this, or they'll understand because we also have another method of they can actually apply for a waiver, and that waiver can be signed by management for whatever reason and say they get to bypass model check. So that was another way for management to document that decision was made. So you're exactly right, they can cheat it, but we have process policies in place to hopefully catch those.
Brandon said thank you, that works for him. Another question came in from Peter. It says, can model check the unit system? Are you talking about whether it's inch or millimeters? And if that is the case, yes. So we don't have it set up that way. We have a parameter called inch in our units in our start part, where then it will go off and actually go run either one of these. You see the chat, Corey? It says, can it check to see if it's IPS or MMKS?
Right. So that's just telling it what. Yeah, it's asking which constant file to use. I believe you can't say it must be inch. It just changes the different setup. Is that kind of where you're going, Peter? Are you always wanting it to be metric or always wanting it to be inch? No response yet, but
Did we answer your question? Just wanted to know and report. Okay. Okay. The question from Dimitri is, how do you use the MC score? We wrote basically like a toolkit that looks at an Excel spreadsheet with all the with all the errors and warnings, and then it takes those errors and warnings and we get a percentage to them, and then it weighs the errors and warnings by, you know, how many you have and the severity, and then it gives a pop-up banner. Gives the score in the pop-up banner, but not only gives a score in the pop-up banner, but it makes a parameter inside the Creo file with the score in it. Corey, are you still on?
I got muted somehow. Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it sounds like I got muted too. Madhavi says, I need to run another meeting. Would you please close out the meeting? So I guess she's running into a time constraint. We'll set up another meeting for Model Check, and we'll have Madhavi send out the invites. So we appreciate all your questions. If you guys have more questions, just email them to Madhavi and she'll pass them along to us. And then we'll present them again in the next meeting. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you guys later.